Hello, everybody. We're back, and today I'm going to teach you about lifting with a belt. So I have gotten some requests about how to lift with a belt, and I've just been noticing lately that we could use some help with our core bracing and breathing strategies, and this is a really great tool if you are not exactly sure like what you're doing with your core when you're lifting. So we're going to talk about using a belt, how to get started with it, when you might use it, why you might use it, maybe a couple of things to look out for if it's not the best option for you. So first thing is, as you can hear, this is a Velcro belt. This is what I suggest you start with. Now, sometimes in competitions, they want you to use a belt with actual holes in it, but the thing about the holes is it's really difficult to dial up the pressure and dial down the pressure. And what I love about the Velcro belt is you can put it, a 1/4 of an inch tighter some days, looser some days, depending on how much intra-abdominal pressure you actually want. So why you would use a belt is it helps you to increase your core pressure. So a lot of people intuitively know that, okay, if I'm going to lift a heavy weight, I want to have a supported core. I think that most people think that means pulling their tummy in or doing something special with the muscles. And although that might be a part of it, supporting yourself through your core when it comes to lifting something heavy is basically about how we generate and maintain intra-abdominal pressure. And that happens through breathing, through bracing. It's not just thinking about engaging one muscle or a group of muscles. We want to tie these things together. And the belt is a fantastic tool because it immediately gives you feedback. So one of the mistakes I think people make is they assume that belts are for people who lift gigantic weights. And although that is true, anybody can use a belt. And when my clients start lifting with a belt, I usually want them to start lifting before they really need it. And I want them to start lifting light weights with the belt, not just like starting using it on heavy weights one day. So the first thing that's really good about the belt is it just simply gives you feedback, right? You're going to be able to feel this part of your body in a new way. One thing that's good to do the first time you put on a belt, okay, usually I wear a shirt, but I'm just demonstrating with no shirt because I want you to see what happens to my tummy when I put on the belt. So the first good thing that's good to do when you are going to start using a belt is to just put it on and then see what your body naturally does. So the other day I gave one of my clients this belt and she put it on, and I'm pretty sure just by watching her that she started kind of like pulling her tummy in against the belt, right? So like the first thing is usually when we put something tight around us, we don't want to let our tummy stick out into that, right? We don't want to feel our tummy is bulging out into something, and using a belt, like that's just what it is. So you do have to kind of be comfortable with like, this thing is going to be tight around my waist. My tummy is actually going to bulge out into it to some degree, depending on how tight you have it on. And that is not a bad thing, right? That's just like a part of it. So you want to put on the belt. Right now I have it on just like light tightness. Like I could walk around with this all day. It's not really like restricting me very much, but I'm just noticing like, can I let my tummy relax into the belt? And can I let my tummy kind of like bulge out a little bit around the belt? And if you're having a hard time with that, if you're like pulling it up and in and trying not to let your tummy bulge out, you're going to have to work on that a little bit. Okay, so the next thing that we want to think about is how tight are we putting the belt on? So when I get like geared up to do a really heavy lift, this is what I do. I'll just show you. I'm going to come close so you can see more of my tummy. So before I do a really heavy squat, I suck my tummy in. I pull the belt really tight like this. so that you can see how my tummy is bulging out of the belt. That's how tight I'm gonna want it if I'm doing like a heavy deadlift or a squat. Okay, I don't leave it like this for very long because it's gonna make it hard to breathe properly for daily life, not properly for my lift. Anyways, then I get really close to my bar. I do my thing, I take a breath in. I do my lift, I put the weight down, I stand back up, and I immediately reduce tension on the belt so I can let my belly relax so that I can breathe and recover and everything like that. So you want to have like a tight mode for when you're doing your heavy exertion, and then you let it relax so that you're not like feeling that constriction for the next 2 minutes while you wait to do your next set. Okay, so the first thing to figure out is like, what's my tight mode? What's my loose mode? The great thing about the Velcro belt is you can put it on just a little bit tight. So I would say the only time when the belt might not be a great option for people is if your core and your pelvic floor actually cannot really withstand higher intra-abdominal pressure. Okay, so if you're a person who like pees a little bit when they sneeze or cough, you might want to work with a pelvic floor person who understands lifting and belt use to go through a bit of a process so that your pelvic floor will be able to handle more pressure, because there is no denying that when we strap on the belt and we take a breath and we do a heavy exertion, we are increasing our core pressure. That is a good thing as long as your core, pelvic floor, whole, ecosystem in there can handle high pressure. And there's incredible rehab you can do in case that's not you right now in this moment. So I've heard lifters say all kinds of things about how to use a belt, and they're not all things that I really like to think about when I'm doing my lifting. So one of the things that I hear a lot is like, put on the belt, strap it on nice and tight, take a breath in, expand into the belt, which is great, that's what we want. And then when you do your lift, push out into the belt. And this might work for some people. I'm sure this works for the lifters who coach in that way. But I don't really find it helps me that much. It's not how I like to think about it. I don't like to think about pushing out while I'm going into my heavy exertion. The way that I think about this is I put my belt on, I strap it on nice and tight, then I take a breath out into the belt, and because the belt is tight there, you can really feel, are you taking a good breath? Is your waist, trunk, core expanding? That's what we want the expansion. And then against that tension of the belt, I imagine that I'm just like bracing everything, like someone's gonna punch me in the stomach. I brace. I don't necessarily push out, okay? So there's a lot of nuances here, and there's like a lot of different ways to use this tool. Now, I will say that when I'm going for a heavy back squat, I put on the belt, I unrack the bar, and then the breath I take is more up into my rib cage. It's like a up here. Am I still expanding through the waist? Of course, but I'm not thinking necessarily about like a lower expansion. I'm thinking about a higher expansion because I feel like that bar is pushing me down and I want to like have lift up against that. When I'm doing a deadlift, I don't do that as much. When I'm doing a deadlift, I bend over and the breath I take is more around the core, more around the waist. You can also use the belt for overhead press, for bench press, right? It doesn't have to just be these legs exercises. You can use the belt for any of these movements. I would just encourage you to play around with, where are you expanding into? Where are you breathing that breath into? Because that might be a little bit different person to person, and it's not just about expanding the tummy and pushing out. Like, there are so many different ways that you could use this tool. I think my first piece of advice for someone who hasn't been using a belt is I would get a belt, get a Velcro belt. I would put it on kind of like, medium tightness, not super duper tight. And first thing I would do is just do your lifts as you usually do them, right? So don't actually change anything. Just like, get set up for your deadlift or your bench press or your whatever lift it is and do it. And just see what having the belt on naturally does for you without really thinking about it too much. Then you can start to play around with your options, okay? How tight do you have the belt? Take a breath in. How much of a breath, right? How big of a breath? That's going to be a little bit different person to person. And it also depends on how heavy the weights are. Like when I'm doing a true super duper heavy back squat, I take a big breath in. I make that noise when I take that breath in. I think sometimes people who are not used to taking up space in the gym are kind of quiet and they don't want to make a lot of noise and like seem too bro-y, and I get that, but sometimes it is really helpful to like take a breath and make a little bit of a noise and use that intensity to help power your lift. And the last thing I really want to make super obvious is when you use the belt, we want to breathe in to create that pressure and that tension through the core. And then at some point during the lift, you're gonna have to breathe out. And that's kind of like up to you to decide when exactly are you gonna start to breathe out. Every person is different, every lift is different, maybe even every day is different. Are you doing a single rep? Are you doing 4 reps? Kind of depends. If you are a person who has come from a method of training where every exertion you do is on an exhale, like in a lot of modalities, they teach you to only do something hard while you're breathing out. And if that's the case for you, using the belt and taking this breath in to generate the tension to do the exertion might be a little bit counterintuitive at first, right? And so you might need to just practice putting on the belt, taking a breath in, feeling your tummy, kind of your tummy, your waist, your ribs kind of bulging out against the belt. That's not a bad thing. And then creating that bracing and using that tension to help transfer the energy better to the limbs. I think that's what the belt is really, really good for. It just helps to transfer the energy so your limbs can do a bigger exertion. Okay, this is my total intro to using the belt. If you have any more questions or comments, or you want to see like a specific lift or a specific usage, let me know in the comments. But I hope that this helps kind of get you started on using the belt for your lifting. Bye, everybody.